button. Okay, so we're right at the beginning of the dialogue here. We're still in book 1, or what we would call chapter 1. Could I get someone to be Polemarchus? I'm just going to read through this together. Awesome. Anthony, you be Polemarchus. I'll be Socrates. Who wants to be Glaucon? Glaucon, great. And do we have somebody for Adiamentus? Perfect, great. Okay, well then let's start. Remember, Socrates and Glaucon were traveling on the road. They came down from wherever they were to the Piraeus, the bustling city port, which we said was diverse. It's a cultural center of trade. And they were going to go back to where they came from, but they were stopped on the road, right? They were stopped by Polemarchus's crew. And Polemarchus said, well, then either you must prove yourself stronger than all these people, or you will have to stay here. You'll have to listen to us. Obviously echoing here the theme that runs through the work of power versus knowledge. How the unwise people are in political power, and the wise people, like the philosophers, are kind of being shoved around, and they have to listen to the rules and laws that the unwise people make. Okay, and Socrates asks, isn't there another alternative still? That we persuade you that you should let us go?
But could you persuade us if we won't listen?
There's no way we could.
Well, we won't listen. You had better make up your mind to that.
Okay, pause right there. Okay, what does Socrates say? What is the other alternative? Yeah.
Talking it out.
Talking it out. This is something that critical thinking should help you do better, right? Persuading people of things. So Socrates is using his critical thinking skills, right? And he's like, well, we could just listen to you. You could muscle us around. You could force us into doing what you want. Or why don't we just persuade you to let us go? Right? That's a live option. What does Polemarchus say?
We just won't listen.
Yeah. Could you persuade us if we're not going to listen to any damn word that you said? And how does Glaucon respond? There is no way we could. And then Polemarchus just comes out with it. Well, we won't listen. You had better make up your mind to do that. Now, unless you're a little bit familiar with Plato's works, you might not catch this. But do you all remember what I said last time about how Socrates died? What his fate was? Does anybody remember?
The same as his teacher.
Yeah, Socrates. Yeah, what happened to him?
The Republic saw that he was being a bad influence on people and didn't want him around.
Right. And so, what was his fate?
They hang him? Or did
They gave him 2 options, right?
Wasn't like he could leave or he drinks the hemlock?
And what did he choose to do?
Drink the hemlock.
Right. Socrates was convicted of impiety, of blaspheming against the gods, and what the city-state of Athens said he was doing, corrupting the youth. Plato actually wrote a dialogue about Socrates in court, where they give him a chance to defend himself, where they're bringing him before all these people to decide what his fate is going to be. This is described in Plato's Apology. Now, you can infer this from what you know of Socrates now. He was convicted of these things. And they said, well, you can either be exiled or you can drink the hemlock and kill yourself. And Socrates decided, the just thing to do would be to kill myself. In the apology, he says, after he's been convicted, actually in a different dialogue, he says, Athens has given me so much. I've learned and grown here. The laws and the institutions have helped me. So it would be a betrayal to basically just be exiled. Like I owe my life to the city in some sense. And I should uphold the rules and laws. I believe that what we're seeing here is a reference to that. Socrates, in his legal defense, he was representing himself, was trying to persuade everybody, hey, I'm not doing these things you're accusing me of. In fact, I'm actually doing the city a service. You should listen to me. And they decided to kill him. Plato here is referencing his mentor, Socrates' death. Nobody listened to Socrates. They didn't listen to his... Those in political power didn't listen to his defense. They weren't persuaded. And so we might extend that to the city-state of Athens as well. They are not persuaded that the philosophical way of life is how we should live, that it's going to bring about happiness and flourishing, that it is the good life, the one that we ought to pursue. Okay, Adiamentus, go ahead.
You mean to say you don't know that there is to be a torch race on horseback for the goddess tonight?
On horseback? That is something new. Are they going to race on horseback and hand the torches on in relays, or what?
In relays. And besides, there will be an all-night celebration that will be worth seeing. We will get up after dinner and go see the festivities. We will meet lots of young men there and have a discussion. So stay and do as we ask.
It looks as if we will have to stay.
If you think so, we must. Now notice what's happening here. Again, just like what we saw on the previous page, Polemarchus says you should stay, don't go anywhere. And who makes the decision that Glaucon and Socrates are going to stay? Glaucon. What do you think that means? Socrates is the philosopher, the wise man, but somebody else is making the decision for him. What does that mean?
Is it kind of like the philosophers are like open to other ideas that aren't their own, so they always like want to do perspective. So like Socrates is kind of just like letting go of the steering wheel and letting Glaucon drive.
I mean, that is certainly true. Yeah, philosophers are going to be open to new ideas. And I mean, we see that kind of intellectual curiosity here, right? The conversation immediately goes on to a tangent because Socrates is like, oh, race on horseback with torches, what's up with that? I want to know about that, right? So that's true. But think about the philosopher in relation to the city and those in power. Again, are the philosophers the ones in control of the laws, the rules, the policies, the trade? No. Again, we see here, Plato is being very insistent with what happens. The unwise, the unwashed masses are the ones who have political power. Remember, because they live in a democracy. As we'll see, Plato's going to criticize democracy. He doesn't think it's good. He thinks it leads to bad stuff, like their loss in the Peloponnesian War. It's notable that Socrates doesn't make the decision. It's supposed to signify that the city in which the philosopher lives is not one that is properly ordered. Where the unwise are in positions of power, bad stuff follows. Okay. Now I'll just read the next section a little bit. So, we went to Polemarchus' house, and there we found Lysias, son of Euthydemus, the brother of Polemarchus, and what is more, Thrasymachus of Chalcedon was there too, and Carmantides of Paeania, and Cleitophon, the son of Aristonomus. Polemarchus' father Cephalus was also inside, and I thought he looked quite old. You see, I hadn't seen him for some time. He was sitting on a sort of chair with cushions and had a wreath on his head, as he had been offering a sacrifice in the courtyard. We sat down beside him, since some chairs were arranged in a circle there. Okay. We're getting some good information just in this paragraph alone, which you might not know, because if you haven't studied Greek history. We get the entrance of one of the most important figures in this book, in this chapter, Thrasymachus of Chalcedon. Thrasymachus actually existed historically. Okay? He was a famous sophist and rhetorician. So, try to think back to what we talked about last class before the break. What were up with the sophists? What did they do?
You had to pay them, and then they would teach you rhetoric.
Right, exactly. Famous sophists, they would go from city to city in Greece, and they would offer their services to young men who are going to eventually enter the political world. And they would say, hey, I will teach you how to use words to, get people to do what you want if you just pay me. Okay, pay me, I'll teach you how to use words well. I'll teach you how to use rhetoric. Again, one of the major themes of this book is how sophistry is distinct and should be contrasted with philosophy. Or rhetoric and philosophy, for instance. Rhetoric is all about learning how to use words to get what you want and to make things happen. Philosophy, Plato is going to say, is about discovering the truth. It's not about manipulating people. Okay? So Thrasymachus, who is a sophist, who knows how to use words well, but may not actually know the fundamental truths of reality, is going to be entering the dialogue here. But we have another important character as well, Cephalus. Cephalus is Polemarchus' father, and how is he described? Old. What else? What is he wearing? What's going on with him?
He has a wreath, right? Like he was giving a sacrifice to the gods.
He has a wreath on. Yeah, it says he's old. What is he doing? He's sitting down on a sort of chair with cushions, with a wreath on his head. Now look back at your notes from last class. What is one of the things that Plato is doing in this work? What is he looking to overturn? I think we listed two things. Greek, Yes?
Doesn't he want to take down the democracy since that's what inherently killed Socrates?
For sure. Yeah, he wants to overturn Greek politics. And what else?
Isn't it
Religion, in some sense. He's offering a different kind of understanding of the gods and things. And one other thing. What was the last thing?
People's view on philosophy.
True. Yeah. You remember us talking about the Homeric tradition?
Oh, yeah, stories.
Of the poems, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, on which Greek culture and education has been based? Cephalus here, I believe, is a stand-in for that Homeric tradition that saturates Greek culture and society at this time. He's described as old, okay? The Homeric tradition is old. He's sitting down on a sort of chair with cushions and had a wreath on his head. What do you think that means? How do people see the Homeric tradition in Athens? Well or poorly? Well, right? They prop it up, you might say. They hold it in high esteem. But it is old, okay? It is old and there are problems with it. So pay attention as we move forward to what happens to Cephalus in this dialogue, what he does, okay? Okay, so they're all sitting down, they're going to talk. I'll just read Cephalus' part and Socrates' part. Socrates, this is Cephalus speaking. You don't often come down to the Piraeus to see us, yet you should. If it were still easy for me to make the trip to town, you wouldn't have to come here. On the contrary, we would come to you. But as it is, you ought to come here more often. I want you to know, you see, that in my case at least, as the other pleasures, the bodily ones, wither away, my appetites for discussions and their pleasures grow stronger. So please, do as I ask. Have a conversation with these young men and stay here with us, as you would with your close friends and relatives. Socrates says, I certainly will, Cephalus. In fact, I enjoy engaging in discussion with the very old. I think we should learn from them, since they are like people who have traveled a road that we too will probably have to follow. What the road is like, whether rough and difficult or smooth and easy. Okay, so now that you know that Cephalus is supposed to symbolize this Homeric tradition in which Greek people are being educated, on which their morality is based, what is Socrates' feelings about it? How does he treat Cephalus here?
As a wise man.
As a wise man?
Sounds like a learning opportunity.
A learning opportunity? Yes. I mean, Socrates comes right out here and says it, right? Interrogating the tradition is a learning opportunity. It's a good thing to do. We shouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay? Have you heard this expression? No? Hopefully some of you have. It means getting rid of everything and you're throwing out some good stuff along with the bad, whereas you could just throw out the bad stuff. It has been said that traditions are solutions to problems that we have forgotten about. You might think that traditions are arbitrary, that they're bad and they got to go and they're terrible and they're oppressive and all of these bad. But there's a reason that traditions develop. So, what is Plato saying here? Well, we shouldn't just throw it out without looking at it, right? There's some good stuff in there. We could learn from what the tradition says and how we've been conditioned into living our lives. We can interrogate that and keep the good stuff, throw away the bad stuff. Okay? And he treats Cephalus with respect. He doesn't just beat the crap out of him or something. That's important. Okay. And he continues. And I would be particularly glad to find out from you what you think about it, since you have reached the point in life the poets call old age's threshold. Is it a difficult time of life? Does it suck being old? How's your old life, old man? What have you to report about it? Okay, can I get someone to read Cephalus now? stand in for Cephalus the old man. You could even do an impression if you want. Could be anybody. You can give up your old part, I don't care. Okay, go for it.
By Zeus, Socrates, I will tell you exactly what I think. You see, a number of us who are more or less the same often get together so as to preserve the old sayings. When they meet, the majority of our members lament, longing for the lost pleasures of their youth and reminiscing about sex, drinking parties, feasts, and the other things that go along with them. They get inherited as if they had been depraved of important things that lived well then but are not living now. Some others, too, even moan about the abuse heaped on old people by their relatives. For that reason, recite a litany of all evils old age has caused them. But I don't think they blame the real cause. Socrates, after all, if that were the cause too, I too would have had the same experiences, at least as far as old age is concerned. And so would everyone else my age. But as it is, I have met others in the past who don't feel that way. In particular, the poet
Sophocles. Yeah.
I was once present when he was asked by someone, "How are you as far as sex goes?" Sophocles. Can you still make love to a woman? Quiet man, he replied. Yeah. I'm very glad to have escaped from all that, like a slave who has escaped from the deranged and savage master. I thought at the time what he said was sensible, and I still do. You see, old age brings peace and freedom from all such things. Can you scroll up? Thank you. When the appetites cease to stress and importune us, everything Sophocles said comes to pass, and we escape from many insane masters. But in these matters, and in those concerning one's relatives and real cause, isn't old age, Socrates, but the way people live. If they are orderly and contented?
Yeah.
Contented, old age, too, is only moderately onerous.
Onerous, yeah.
Onerous if they aren't both old age, Socrates and youth are hard to bear.
Okay, so Socrates asks, how's your life, old man? Does it suck? Because I'm going to be getting older, too. I want to know, what do I need to know about it? And what does Cephalus say? How is his old age? Is he enjoying his elderly years?
Like he is, but he's different than most.
Yeah, he's different than some people. He is enjoying it.
Yeah, I think he comes to the point where he's like, I think it depends on the person and how they live their life. And it gets into that thing where he's like, if you're a good person, then your life is good. And if you're a bad person, then your life is bad.
What does it mean to be a good or bad person in this context here? He says his old age is going well. Why?
He said you have to be like orderly.
Orderly? I mean, what is their topic of discussion here?
Like, kind of like bodily vices.
Bodily vices, right? This discussion is about sex, right? And what does he say? Well, when I was a young man, I engaged in all these promiscuous activities. A lot of people do, he says. But if they live their whole lives like that, what happens when they get older? They're used to just having orgies all the time, let's say.
They can only lament what they've lost because that was all they gained any satisfaction from. And that's
Right.
why, people like Socrates who gain satisfaction from discussion and learning have something that lasts until their old age.
Right. Right. How you live your life in your youth, Cephalus says, is going to influence how your old age, how your elderly life feels to you. If you cultivate all these vices for bodily pleasures, comfort, right? Sexual pleasure, whatever it is. If you can't do that stuff when you're old, of course you're going to feel like your old age sucks. You can't do the fun stuff you used to do, right? But if you live a virtuous life in which you control your passions, in which you have ordered your body and your mind and your soul in a particular way, your old age is not going to be onerous. You're not going to feel like you're missing out. Now, what do you all think about that? Do you agree? Disagree?
I can agree with that.
Okay, why?
I think overall, if you live your life pretty orderly, I feel like, your life will just overall be better. And I think, focusing on like your passions too much takes away from other aspects of life that you might not be able to enjoy. So if you're more of like a well-balanced person, you can enjoy every aspect of life, not just focusing on one thing.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Y'all agree with Cephalus? Yeah, we should develop self-control, control our passions and our urges so that they don't rule us. He describes desire and passion in this way of, he analogizes it to a slave and a master. How easy is it for us to become slaves to our desires? Think about addiction. People get caught in these cycles of addiction, right? Where, whether it's nicotine and you have a vape, or it's social media, or it's heroin or alcohol or anything else, if you're captured by that thing, do you really have control over your life? Or are you being led by your desires? Are you being led and controlled by your passions, your addictions? Well, that's something worth reflecting on, okay? So, Cephalus' basic point is, actually old age can be good because it can help us escape being a slave to our desires and our passions. And what does Socrates say? I admired him for saying that, or he's thinking this, and I wanted him to tell me more, so I urged him on. I imagine when you say that, Cephalus, the masses do not accept it. On the contrary, they think you bear old age more easily, not because of the way you live, but because you are wealthy. For the wealthy, they say, have many consolations. Now, a few things to note here. The Greek word for masses, maybe you've actually heard this phrase before. It's the hoi polloi. Have you heard this before? It's like the masses are being described here as the people enslaved to their desires, they're not noble, they're not virtuous, they're just kind of not in control of themselves, and they kind of say and do unwise things. Okay? The masses are the hoi polloi. And he says, the masses would criticize you for the story you just gave us. It's not that, your old age is good, the masses will say, because of the way you live. It's just because you're rich. And wealth can do a lot of great things for us. Right? So that's the only reason why your old age is going well for you, is because you have money. Would your old age be going well for you if you were poor? What do you think? What is the connection between a happy life, a fulfilling life, and money? Do you need wealth to be a happy and fulfilled person? What do you think? Yeah?
I think Cephalus says no because it says someone like who doesn't have a virtuous life won't be happy even with money. It
Mm.
makes someone who is virtuous even more happy. And I think he comes to the conclusion that it's only as good as it keeps you from being unvirtuous. You don't need to like commit a crime to steal and then worry about going to, Hades or stuff like that. Like money's only as good as it is a tool to keep you virtuous and thusly keep your like conscience clean, and you can be happier because you don't need to worry about paying for your crimes because you won't have to commit them because you're well off enough to avoid having to need to do them.
Okay. Do the rest of y'all agree? Do you need to be wealthy to be happy and fulfilled?
I think wealth allows someone to achieve it better than others.
Okay, say more about that.
Because it's like, I don't know if wealthy, more like you just need like enough to be comfortable.
Okay.
It depends on what you want more as well. Because if you just, you want a stable house where you could just conversate, you do need a level of wealth to achieve it. Whereas someone might be more ambitious, which could lead to, what you were saying, like more unvirtuous acts, where that'd be like hoarding it or stuff like that.
Okay. So yeah, look, there are a lot of great things wealth can do for you, right? You won't have to worry about bills. You'll be able to put food on the table. You'll be able to support your family. You'll have a house to live in, right? You won't be living on the street. So it can be useful. It can be helpful. But maybe it depends on how you use it, what you use it for. I'm sure you know a lot of wealthy people, maybe not personally, that are not happy. If you don't think wealth brings happiness or fulfillment, well, you're in agreement with Plato. Plato doesn't think that either. He realizes how it can be instrumentally useful. It can help you stay alive. It can help you, give you opportunities perhaps to cultivate virtue. But it's not the be-all, end-all. And Plato would go further. He would say, actually, you can achieve a fulfilling life, a happy life, with not much money at all. It depends on how your soul is ordered, on what your priorities are. And we'll see that as we go through the rest of this. Okay, Cephalus.
Me again?
Yeah.
That's true. They're not convinced. And there is something in their objection, though, not as much as they think.
Themistocles, yeah.
Themistocles' retort is relevant here. When someone is Sepphoris?
Yeah, when someone from Seriphus.
When someone from Seriphus insulted him by saying his high reputation was due to his city, not to himself, he replied to that. Had he been a Seraphian, he would not be famous, but nor would the other, had he been an Athenian. The same amount applies to those who are not rich and find out old age hard to bear. A good person would not easily bear old age if it were coupled with poverty. But one who wasn't good would not be at peace with himself, even if you're wealthy.
Good. Okay, so Plato is putting in the mouth of Cephalus here the general point we just talked about, right? Like, it depends on the kind of person you are. If you're a crappy person who has bad priorities, who's captured by their addictions and their, desires, you're still not going to be happy even if you have a ton of wealth. Okay? And Socrates now makes it personal. Did you inherit most of your wealth, Cephalus, or did you make it yourself? Do one more, and then I'll...
Okay. What did I make for myself, Socrates, you ask? As a moneymaker, I'm in between my grandfather and my father. You see, my grandfather and their namesake inherited the same amount of wealth as I possess, and multiplied it as many times. However, my father,
Lysanias.
diminished that amount even less than I have now. As for me, I am satisfied to leave my sons here with no less, but a little more than I inherited.
Okay. So he's had a pretty good life, right? He was able to grow his wealth. The reason I asked, Socrates says, is that you do not seem particularly to love money. And those who have not made it themselves are usually like that. But those who have made it themselves love it twice as much as anyone else. For just as poets love their poems and fathers their children, so those who have made money take their money seriously, both as something they have made themselves and just as other people do, because it is useful. This makes them difficult even to be with, since they are unwilling to praise anything except money. Okay, so depending on what your relationship to money is, right, that is going to influence how you feel when you lose it, when you spend it, when you make more, etc., blah, blah, blah. Cephalus says that's true. Socrates says, indeed it is. But tell me something else. What do you think is the greatest good you have enjoyed as a result of being very wealthy? Okay, could I get a new Cephalus here? Just read this paragraph. Anthony.
What I have to say probably would not persuade the masses, but you are all well aware, Socrates, that when someone thinks his end is near, he becomes frightened and concerned about things he did not fear before. It is then that the stories told about Hades, that a person who has been unjust here must pay the penalty there, stories he used to make fun of, twist his soul this way and that for fear they are true. And whether because of the weakness of old age, or because he is now closer to what happens in Hades and has a clearer view of it, or whether it is he is filled with foreboding and fear, and begins to calculate and consider whether he has been unjust to anyone. If he finds many injustices in his life, he often even wakes from sleep in terror, as children do, and lives in anticipation of evils to come. But someone who knows he has not been unjust has sweet good hope as his constant companion, a nurse to his old age, as Pindar says. For he puts it charmingly, Socrates, when he says that when someone lives a just and pious life, sweet hope is in his heart, nurse and companion to his age, hope, captain of the ever-twisting mind of mortal men. How amazingly well he puts that. It is in this connection, I would say, the possession of wealth is most valuable, not for every man, but for a good and orderly man. Not cheating someone, even unintentionally, not lying to him, not owing a sacrifice to some god or money to a person, but as a result, departing from that other place in fear. The possession of wealth makes no small contribution to this. It has many other uses too. But putting one thing against the other, Socrates, I would say that for a man with any sense, that is how wealth is most useful.
Okay. So Cephalus is old. As an old guy, what is he thinking about?
Death.
Death. When you think about death, what kind of feelings does it produce in you? You can be honest. Terror, fear, apprehension. Yes? Maybe? Maybe you try not to think about death at all because you're like, I don't want to think about that. Why might you be afraid of death? Or why are some people afraid of death?
The afterlife.
Because of the afterlife. Yeah, why? It's unknown? Yeah. Have you ever worried about whether or not after you die you're going to go to the good place or the bad place? Have you ever thought about that? That can be terrifying, right? So, old age, Cephalus says, often leads to those people reflecting on death and the afterlife. Why? Well, because whether it's our culture that we were raised in, this is a pretty Christianized culture, or it's ancient Greek society, which is Homeric, that has a pantheon of gods, but they also have a picture of the afterlife. Right? You can go to Hades or the Elysian Fields, the good place. You might wonder, am I going to face like the God's punishment because of how I live my life? Where am I going to go after I die? And that might freak you out. So, what does Cephalus say wealth is good for? Remember the original question that Socrates asked. What do you think is the greatest good you have enjoyed as a result of being very wealthy? What does Cephalus say? Mm-hmm.
So, in like, I wouldn't say help, but act in just ways.
Yes. Yeah.
Remaining like truthful, not cheating anyone, and repaying all these debts.
Right. Yes. If you don't know much about Greek culture and society, well, because of their polytheistic religion, the practice of that religion was ritualistic. Okay, like Judaism, like the ancient Israelites, and like a lot of other religions, people would offer sacrifices to their gods, okay, in praise or to try to atone for one of their sins. Cephalus is saying here that wealth is good because you can use it to make amends for the unjust things that you've done in your life. He says this is the greatest good of being wealthy. It allows one to make amends. Whether that's in the form of sacrificing to the gods so that you appease them and you end up in the good place, or it's to repay your debts, settle your relationships here on earth with people, make sure everything's going well. Wealth allows us to make amends. You might say, Cephalus is saying, wealth kind of allows us to buy insurance for the afterlife. In case there is an afterlife, like, I'm going to be okay because I'm making my sacrifices here. I'm using my wealth to get in good with the gods before I... Buying insurance for the afterlife or something. And what does Socrates say? A fine sentiment, Cephalus, but speaking of that thing itself, justice, are we to say it is simply speaking the truth and paying whatever debts one has incurred? Or is it sometimes just to do these things, sometimes unjust? I mean this sort of thing. Everyone would surely agree that if a man borrows a weapon from a sane friend, and if he goes mad and asks for the weapon back, the friend should not return them, and would not be just if he did. Nor should anyone be willing to tell the whole truth to someone in such a state. So now we get into the topic of the entire dialogue, what justice is. Because Cephalus has offered a kind of definition in what he previously said, even though that wasn't really what he was focusing on. Justice is, Cephalus says, speaking truth and paying back what we owe. Now, Socrates criticizes this conception, this definition of justice. How does he criticize it? How is he attacking it?
kind of showing that wealth can't like make up for mistakes that you would have made. Like, let's say that same friend did give that weapon, like no amount of wealth that he made could ever pay that back.
Okay.
So he's kind of challenging on that, like, well, your wealth won't be able to fix everything.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Thinking about justice, though, and this sword example, how does Socrates attack this conception of justice?
Well, you can't just say that it's paying everything back, and he literally just gives the example to be like, you can't do that, because if you give a madman back their thing, it's not necessarily just. So you can't say that speaking truth and paying back what we owe is the definition of justice, but there's situations where it's not.
Right. What do you all think of Socrates' example here? He raises this example to show that Cephalus' definition of justice is wrong. It's not a good conception of justice. It's not true. Do you agree with Socrates? You do?
Yeah.
You think this is a good example?
I think that he's just kind of like avoiding what could go wrong, because like the entire point he's making in like rebuttal is like sometimes doing what's just can also cause harm. Which, like you said, it's then unjust, like the action itself becomes unjust. So.
That raises a great question. Think about your idea of justice. You know, maybe picture and imagine what justice looks like to you. Does justice ever cause people harm? It's worth thinking about. Think about what you think justice is. When we administer justice, is that harmful to people, or is that good for people? Or somewhere in between? Well, think about that as we move forward. Socrates offers his rebuttal, and he says, no, justice isn't just speaking the truth and paying back what you owe. This obvious case should show you that. Cephalus says that's true. Socrates replies, then the following is not the definition of justice: to speak the truth and repay what one has borrowed. And Polemarchus interrupts. Could I get a Polemarchus? Going once. Somebody play the role of Polemarchus here. I'll chuck this at you. All right, go for it.
It certainly is Socrates, if indeed we are to trust Simonides at all.
Cephalus says, well then, I will hand over the discussion to you, since it is time for me to look after those sacrifices.
Am I, Polemarchus, not here to all your possessions?
Cephalus replied with a laugh, certainly you're the heir to all my possessions. And off he went to the sacrifice. Notice what happens here. Polemarchus interrupts the conversation that Socrates and Cephalus, his dad, are having. And then what happens to Cephalus?
He hands it off.
He hands off the discussion. He leaves. Remember what we wrote about Cephalus here. What does him leaving signify? What do you think Plato is trying to say through Cephalus leaving the dialogue? You go first.
Since Cephalus' tradition, handing it off to his son might give like an idea of passing down traditions and how it might be different or the same in some ways as his father.
Yeah, that might be part of what Plato's trying to get at. What do the rest of y'all think? Yeah?
I think it means it's like it's an old way of thinking. It's too far back, and now considering we now have this democratic state of Greece at the moment. Of course, there's the 30 tyrants, but there's still like the democracy previous to that. That this old way of thinking is not accurate anymore to the current state. So it is to lead the conversation, and Polemarchus is the one to combat the current crisis.
Yes, both of what you said was good and true, I think. Cephalus passes the torch to his son. Traditions do get handed down. You might say the vast majority of people in Athens right now have been conditioned to believe in and follow this Homeric tradition. But traditions don't last forever. And what is Plato doing with Cephalus leaving the dialogue? Well, in a sense, he's saying tradition has to go. It's not solving everything for us. It is not completely true. There are things that are wrong with it. Okay? So, the character who represents this tradition, who represents the old ways and norms, he has to go for Plato. Okay? The old ways cannot remain forever. In fact, it would be bad if they remained forever. Bad for people, bad for the society. They're finding good in some respects, but we can add on to them and reform them, and we can do better. Okay? We can create a new way of life. Okay, Socrates says, then tell us, heir to the discussion, just what Simonides said about justice that you think is correct.
He said it is just to give each what is owed to them, and if I'm saying it is an idea.
Well now, it is not easy to disagree with Simonides, since he is a wise and godlike man. But what exactly does he mean? Perhaps you know Polemarchus, but I do not understand. Clearly he does not mean what we said a moment ago, namely giving back to someone whatever he has lent you, even if he is out of his mind when he asks for it. And yet, what he has lent to you is surely something that is owed to him, isn't it?
Yes.
But when he is out of his mind, it is under no circumstances to be given back to him?
True.
Then it seems Simonides must have meant something else when he says that to return what is owed is just.
Something else indeed by Zeus. He meant friends owe something good to their friends, never something bad.
I understand. You mean someone does not give a lender what he is owed by giving him gold, when the giving and taking would be harmful, and both he and the lender are friends? Isn't that what you say Simonides meant?
Certainly is.
Okay, so just to point out one thing, does Socrates just immediately say this Simonides guy is bullshit, doesn't know anything? No, how does he treat Simonides' conception of justice? Think back to one of the first weeks in class, when we talked about fallacies, when we talked about virtues when it comes to dialogue and argumentation.
He's trying to understand his point of view. And, he starts off by saying it seems like at a base level virtuous.
Yeah, he's not throwing what the guy said, the guy's position in the mud. He's not straw-manning it. He's looking at it charitably. In fact, he's saying, well, no, Simonides was a smart guy, so, his position has to be a little different, more nuanced, stronger than how we've just presented it. If anything, it's like he's trying to steelman Simonides' conception of justice. And Polemarchus agrees. Yeah, he meant something else. And what does he say? He meant that friends owe something good to their friends, never something bad. So let's write that down. Something like justice is doing good to your friends and harm to your enemies. This is what Polemarchus is thinking Simonides must have meant. And Polemarchus says, it certainly is. And Socrates replies, now what about this? Should one also give to one's enemies whatever is owed to them? Angel.
Oh, yeah. Yes, by all means, but what is in fact owed to them, and what an enemy owes to an enemy, in my view, is also precisely what is appropriate, something bad.
It seems then that Simonides was speaking in riddles, just like a poet, when he said what justice is. For what he meant, it seems, is that it is just to give to each what is appropriate to him. And this is what he called giving him what he is owed.
What else did you think he meant?
Well, then what in the name of Zeus do you think he would answer if someone asked him, Simonides, what owed or appropriate things does the craft we call medicine give, and to which things?
We would say it gives drugs, food, and drink to bodies.
And what owed or appropriate things does the craft we call cooking give, and to which things?
Pleasant flavors to food.
Just a note here, the word that's being used here is techne for craft. A techne is something like, it's a productive activity. It results in something at the end of it. It's like you're making or building something, or you're bringing about a certain result. Okay? It's associated in Plato's philosophy with a certain kind of practical knowledge. So doctors know how to practice the craft of medicine. They have a certain knowledge, so on and so forth. Good. Now, what does the craft we would call justice give? And to whom or what does it give it?
If we were to follow the previous answer, Socrates, it gives benefit to friends and harm to enemies.
Does Simonides mean then that treating friends well and enemies badly is justice?
I believe so.
And who is most capable of treating sick friends well and enemies badly in matters of disease and health?
A doctor,
And who can do so best in a storm at sea?
a ship's captain,
What about the just person? In what actions and what work is he most capable of benefiting friends and harming enemies?
in wars and alliances, I imagine.
All right. Now, when people are not sick, Polemarchus, a doctor is useless to them.
True.
And so is a ship's captain to those who are not sailing.
Yes.
So to people who are not at war, a just man is useless.
No, I don't think that at all.
So justice is also useful in peacetime,
Yes, it is useful.
and so is farming, isn't it?
Yeah.
For providing produce.
Yeah.
And shoemaking as well, of course.
Yeah.
For the acquisition of shoes, I suppose you would say.
Of course.
Tell me then, what is justice useful for using or acquiring in peacetime?
Contract, Socrates.
Contracts. And by contracts, you mean partnerships or what?
Partnerships, of course.
So, is it a just man who is a good and useful partner in a game of checkers, or an expert checkers player?
An expert checkers player.
And in laying bricks and stones, is a just person a better and more useful partner than a builder?
Not at all.
Remember, he just said, right, partnerships, just people are useful in partnerships. And Socrates is bringing up these examples to say something like, well, no, it's like the expert that you want in a partnership in these different activities, right? They would be more useful to you. Well, in what kind of partnership, then, is a just person a better partner than a builder or a lyre player? In the way a lyre player is better than a just person at hitting the right notes.
In money matters,
Except, I presume, Polemarchus, in using money. You see, whenever one needs to buy or sell a horse jointly, I think a horse breeder is a more useful partner, isn't he?
Apparently.
And when it is a boat, or a boat builder, or a ship's captain,
It would seem so.
in what joint use of silver or gold, then, is a just person a more useful partner than anyone else?
When yours must be deposited for safekeeping, Socrates.
You mean whenever there is no need to use it, but only to keep it?
Of course.
So when money is not being used, that is when justice is useful for it.
It looks that way.
And when one needs to keep a pruning knife safe, justice is useful both in partnerships and for the individual. When you need to use it, however, it is the craft of vine pruning that is useful.
Apparently.
And would you also say that when one needs to keep a shield and a lyre safe and not use them, justice is a useful thing? But when you need to use them, it is the soldier's craft or the musician's that is useful?
I would have to.
And so in all other cases too, justice is useless when they are in use, but useful when they are not.
It looks that way.
Then justice cannot be something excellent, can it, my friend? If it is only useful for useless things. Now, were you able to follow all that? One gets the sense here that maybe Socrates is using some kind of fishy argumentation. Like maybe he's using some rhetoric of his own. But regardless, I mean, he's going back and forth with Polemarchus here. And every answer that Polemarchus is given, Socrates has shown that, well, your answer leads to a contradiction somewhere. So if we follow Polemarchus' line of thinking, the conclusion, Socrates argues, is that justice cannot be something excellent. This word for excellent is arete, the Greek word arete. The arete of something is what makes it good. Plato is going to argue, contrary to this, justice is excellent. Justice is a virtue. Justice is excellent, and it's useful for things. So, again, what Socrates is trying to show here is that Polemarchus' conception leads to philosophical problems. It leads to contradictions. Okay? And the one who is, or we were here, sorry. But let's consider the following point. Isn't the person who is cleverest at landing a blow, whether in boxing or in any other kind of fight, also cleverest at guarding against it?
Of course.
And the one who is clever at guarding against disease is also cleverest at producing it unnoticed?
That is my view at any rate.
And the one who is a good guardian of an army is the very one who can steal the enemy's plans and dispositions?
Of course.
So, whenever someone is a clever guardian of something, he is also clever at stealing it.
Seems so.
So if a just person is clever at guarding money, he must also be clever at stealing it.
So the argument suggests at least.
It seems then that a just person has turned out to be a kind of thief on your view, Polemarchus. You probably got that idea from Homer. For he loves Autolycus, the maternal grandfather of Odysseus, whom he describes as better than everyone at stealing and swearing false oaths. According to you, Homer and Simonides, then, justice seems to be some sort of craft of stealing, one that benefits friends and harms enemies. Isn't that what you meant?
No, by Zeus it isn't. But I do not know anymore what I meant. I still believe this, however, that benefiting one's friends and harming one's enemies is justice.
looking at the argument on this page, in which Socrates has concluded that justice seems to be some sort of activity of stealing. What do you think about this? Is this silly? Is it a good argument? Socrates, does he have airtight logic here? What do you think? Just give me your opinions about it.
No, because he's just like debunking what this one guy's specific idea of justice might have been. And that's, he only came to the money thing because we pressured him into realizing he didn't have a specific job for it. So he gave it to the only job where he felt like, I don't know, accountability was a part of it. So a just man would be accountable.
Okay. Good. What do the rest of y'all think? Do you agree with Socrates' argument?
I mean, I don't, like, in the most recent part, it's kind of like, in my opinion, he's like diving a little too far, because he's like, someone who can identify medicine is the best at producing it unnoticed. How would they produce it unnoticed?
Yeah, I mean, you wonder, where did he get that idea? And like, it seems like he's trying to, well, he's obviously trying to criticize Polemarchus' view here, but his argumentation is kind of strange, right? Maybe you might think it's a little underhanded. Like maybe Socrates is even engaging in some sophistry here or something. When I read this, I just think about how fishy it is. And I'm like, what? Really? I think what's going on here is a few things, but one of them is this. We obviously see in this paragraph the criticism of the Homeric tradition, right? There's going to be a lot of that in this book. But let's assume for a moment that Socrates is using fishy argumentation. It's not quite right. It's underhanded maybe. It's a little weird. Why might he do that? We have everybody sitting in a circle, right? We have Adiamentus, we have Polemarchus, we have Glaucon, we have Thrasymachus, we have some other people, Socrates, they're chatting. What reason do you think Socrates has to use fishy, not quite right argumentation?
Is it because his company might not be able to identify it or like combat against it?
Well, that's probably true. I mean, Socrates comes off as a smart guy in the dialogues. Like he seems to know a lot, even though he always says he doesn't know anything. But Socrates, like Cephalus, is getting older. But he still has a stake in how Athens is run and what the laws are. He has a stake in the education of the young men of the city. Remember that during this time, sophists were traveling around from city-state to city-state. Okay? They were teaching young men how to use rhetoric for money. Plato doesn't like that. Plato thinks that's not a real education. If Plato had his way, the young men of the city wouldn't be educated in rhetoric. What would they be educated in? Philosophy. Adiamentus and Glaucon are young aristocratic men who are still undecided on a wide range of things that they believe. I believe Socrates here is using fishy argumentation to lure these guys into the conversation. To lure them into the conversation so that, and perhaps Thrasymachus as well, the famous sophist, so that he can show this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and philosophy is the way to go. What do you think about that? Does that make sense? You'll see this at the end of book 1 if you have not gotten there yet. Thrasymachus is going to enter the conversation, and him and Socrates are going to have a long chat. And Socrates is basically just going to dunk on him, time and time again. In doing this, Socrates has exposed Thrasymachus and sophistry as not leading to truth, not leading to knowledge, not knowing what it's talking about. And then he's going to give to these young men throughout the whole course of the book a defense of philosophy and why they should care about it and why people should be educated in that. Okay, any questions about what we looked at today? All right, then I will let you go. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you all have a great day.